Hello and welcome. I am Olumuyiwa Jesuloluwa, and in this podcast, we're going to be breaking down a really interesting Nigerian case, the Domitilla movie trademark dispute between Zeb Ejiro and Anne Njemanze. Today, we're diving into a story that's part legal drama in the history of Nollywood, and a very important case study on why intellectual property law is absolutely everything paramount in the creative industry. And this case is all about a fight over a name. On one side, you have the producer who created the famous Domitilla movie character. On the other, the actress who brought that character to life and became famous for it. So, in this podcast, we're going to walk through what happened. We'll look at the main legal problems, see what the court decided, and then I'll give my thoughts on whether it was the right call and what it says about the Nigerian trademark law. Let us get into it. Now let's rewind. The year is 1996. Producer Zeb Ejiro, a true pioneer of Nollywood, releases a film, Domitilla. It was a hit and he made a star out of its lead actress, Anne Njemanze. She wasn't just an actress in the movie, she was Domitilla. It got to an extent that the public fused their identity with the character. And the movie was so successful that a sequel, Domitilla 2, followed just 3 years later. And of course, the same thing happened. It was successful. Then, silence for over 2 decades. Now, cut to 2020, Zeb Ejiro, seeing the revolution of Nollywood, decides it's time for a part 3, Domitilla the Reboot, as it was named. He reaches out to the original star, Anne, not to replay an iconic role this time, but to play a new one, the aunt, to the main character. However, they couldn't agree on terms, so the producer moved forward. Now, that's when he received a legal bombshell, a cease and desist letter. Anne Njemanze was claiming she owned the name, she had registered Domitilla and device as a trademark, and the reboot, as she argued, was an infringement on her trademark rights, suing the filmmaker for 50 million naira in damages. Now, the filmmaker, Zeb Ejiro, responded to the lawsuit filed by the actress Anne at the Federal High Court in Abuja, challenging the decision of the Federal Trademarks Registry to revoke her ownership of the Domitilla trademark in a counter-action and suing her for breach of confidence. And so began a legal duel that forced the Nigerian legal system to answer a simple but deceptive question: who really owns a character's name? Where does an actor's performance end and a producer's intellectual property begin? Now let's talk about how the law played out. As I said earlier, the case touched on a few critical issues and they were analyzed by the ruling of the tribunal and courts. The first is on the question of true proprietorship. And now this is the heart of the matter. The Nigerian trademark law states that only the true proprietor of a mark can register it. So, who is it? Is it the author, the visionary who conceived the movie, the character, and the name? Or is it the interpreter? That is, the actor who gave it a face and a soul, and with whom the public most directly identifies. Now, the tribunal's finding was clear. Proprietorship begins with creation. Zeb Ejiro created Domitilla, therefore it was the true owner of the trademark. The actress's iconic performance, while it was invaluable, did not transfer the ownership of the intellectual property to her. Now, while Anne, the actress, was the first to register the name, as she argued, the tribunal found evidence that Zeb Ejiro was the first to use it commercially, all the way back in 1996 with the release of the original film. The tribunal stated that clearly the actress's goodwill or reputation she has was solely attributable to her role in the petitioner's film. The court, also on the common law principle as established by Moritz L.J. in the English case of Our Sam Trademark, where it was held that proprietorship is determined by first to use the trademark. In their view, the personal fame she got cannot be separated from the intellectual property assets or benefits that Mr. Ejiro created. The second is on the issue of bad faith. Now, this is where the case gets its moral weight. The tribunal found that Anne Njemanze had registered the trademark in bad faith. This is a crucial concept in IP law. To define bad faith, it is the intentional dishonest or unfair conduct of a party, such as deceiving another or acting with an improper motive. Having stared in the films that created the value of the Domitilla name, a subsequent attempt to own it legally was seen as a betrayal of that original collaboration. This finding was vital because bad faith is a well-established ground for invalidating a trademark, even if it's not explicitly detailed in the act itself. Now, the third issue is on the clash of use versus registration. This is a fundamental tension in trademark law globally. There's always a question as to, is it the first to use or the first to file? Now, Nigeria's law, like many common law systems, leans heavily towards protecting the first user in commerce. Zeb Ejiro used Domitilla commercially in 1996. At the same time, it must be noted that Anne filed for it decades later. The fault is on the phantom of goodwill, where the actress argued that she had built up some personal goodwill in the name Domitilla, with the court basically replying that her goodwill is naturally tied to the film's goodwill. Although the public recognized her as the character from Zeb Ejiro's movie, her fame derived from the original intellectual property, as she couldn't separate the two and claim the roots as her own. Now, the last issue is on jurisdiction and timeliness. The respondents raised a defense, arguing the petition was statute bar, and as the time for formal opposition had elapsed. Actress Anne contended that the time within which the petitioner could oppose her trademark application, which is 2 months from the date of publication, had elapsed, and therefore the petitioner was stopped from approaching the trademark tribunal, and the tribunal had no jurisdiction to judge the matter. He found that the respondent's only evidence to show ownership of the trademark was an acknowledgement and acceptance letter from the trademarks industry. It is worth noting that at the time the petition was filed, the respondent's trademark had been accepted and published, but registration certificates have not been issued by the registry. The tribunal concluded that these documents did not provide adequate proof of ownership or proprietorship of the trademark. And the tribunal was crystal clear in its ruling delivered on February 4, 2023. Registrar Shafiu Adamu Yari stated directly, Anne Njemanze is not the proprietor of the trademark Domitilla, but rather copied the name from Zeb Ejiro and filed for registration of the same. Now, moving on to my analysis, the law worked, but lessons were learned. So, if you would ask, do I agree with this ruling? Wholeheartedly. I believe the tribunal reached the only conclusion that protects the world of creativity. Awarding the trademark to the actress would have set a bad precedent. Imagine a world where any actor could trademark their character's name after a project ends. It would damage creativity and make storytellers or filmmakers, in this case, be fearful and incapable of handling their own creations. The fact that you are engaged to act as a character in a film does not simply imply that one can trademark it, as one who is neither the writer who developed the film or filmmaker who owns the film. The actor or actress in a movie does not own the intellectual property attached to the character's name. The tribunal used the tools it had, especially the doctrine of bad faith, brilliantly to achieve a just outcome. And this ruling perfectly aligns with the TRIPS agreement, which obligates countries to protect well-known marks, even registered ones. The tribunal also, sidestepping the issue of statute of limitation, also ruled that this was not a standard opposition proceeding, but a petition for invalidation, which was a different legal pathway. Furthermore, they invoked the registrar's power to correct errors, classifying the acceptance of the application as a mistake. They do reference sections of the Act that allow the registry to correct errors when a trademark is accepted by mistake. And this is established in Section 18, Sub 7 of the Trademark Act. But this leads to a bigger question. Are Nigerian intellectual property laws adequate? This case actually shows that the acts themselves are surprisingly robust. The Trademark Act has the necessary provisions. First, on the issue of prior use and continuous use, is provided in Section 7 of the Act. It protects the rights of a prior continuous user against the latter registered owner. Zeb Ejiro's prior use since 1996 would have protected his right to continue using the mark, even if the registration stood. Section 9 on the issue of true ownership states that a trademark must be registered by its true proprietor, making the actress's registration invalid from the start. All this on the issue of opposition proceedings, as underlined by Section 20, which allows any person to oppose a trademark application within 2 months of his advertisement. Another is on deceptive marks, as outlined in Section 11, which prohibits registration of marks that are deceptive or likely to cause confusion. This supported the argument that the public would associate the mark with the film and not with the actress individually. Section 31 of the Act touches revocation for non-use, allowing a trademark to be revoked if it's not used for a continuous 5-year period. And this provides a future grant that could be used if the registered owners failed to use the mark commercially. Overall, the tribunal's ruling in the Domitilla's case was a robust application of these sections, particularly the principles of true proprietorship and the protection offered to such prior users, dismissing a registration if found to be made in bad faith. Now, looking at the two prominent acts in the realm of intellectual property law, the Trademarks Act and the Nigerian Copyright Act interlopes. The first ownership of copyright vests in the author, typically the producer of the film. In this case, Zeb Ejiro owns the copyright for Domitilla. However, it's essential to note that copyright does not cover single words or phrases, which are better protected under trademark law. I have stated the facts of the Domitilla disputes, analyzed the key issues of proprietorship and bad faith, and given my opinion on the court's ruling. This case clearly shows the importance of prior use in the trademark law and the risk of acting in bad faith. It also serves as a crucial lesson for all creatives to secure their intellectual property rights from the beginning. Thank you for listening. Stay curious.